a Hollywood mystery that refuses to die. For over 40 years, one of Hollywood's darkest and most chilling mysteries has stayed unsolved. What really happened to Natalie Wood that freezing November night in 1981? As more people came forward and old stories started to shift, suspicions kept circling one man, Robert Wagner. But what did he actually say that night, and what did he leave out? People claimed to hear cries echoing across the cold, black water. But Wagner stayed quiet for years, and that silence spoke louder than words. Now, after decades of questions and rumors, are we finally about to uncover the truth? Or are we just getting pulled deeper into the shadows of this cold case? One of the most disturbing parts of Natalie Wood's tragic death is the long delay in reporting her missing. After a night filled with drinking and tension aboard the yacht Splendor, anchored off Catalina Island, Natalie vanished sometime around 11 p.m. Witnesses, including the boat's captain, Dennis Davern, said that an argument broke out between Natalie and her husband, Robert Wagner, shortly before she disappeared. But shockingly, Wagner didn't immediately try to find her. He didn't call for help, not even a search. Hours went by before anyone alerted the authorities. The U.S. Coast Guard wasn't contacted until around 3:30 a.m. That's over 4 hours after Natalie was last seen. And it gets worse. Roger Smith, the captain of the rescue boat that eventually found Natalie's body, said he wasn't called until 5:11 a.m., nearly 6 hours later. This wasn't just a delay. It was a disaster. That night, the ocean was rough, with strong winds and dangerous waves. If someone had fallen in, time was everything. Every minute counted. But instead of acting fast, those on board hesitated. And that delay broke every rule in the book for boat emergencies. Captain Dennis Davern later revealed something that shocked everyone. He said Wagner specifically told him not to turn on the searchlights or call for help. Davern claimed Wagner told him, "Don't do anything. Let's not turn on the searchlight." Even more suspicious, earlier that day, Wagner had moved the boat to a more hidden harbor. This decision, combined with the delay, set off major red flags. Davern claimed Wagner seemed more focused on hiding the situation than finding his wife. This would become a key detail when investigators reopened the case years later. It wasn't just a delay anymore. It started looking like something far more serious. Something that couldn't be ignored. Police admitted that if they had been called sooner, they might have been able to piece together exactly what happened that night. But they weren't. And because of that, the mystery deepened. Then, in 2018, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department named Robert Wagner as a person of interest. Why? Because of the strange gaps in his story. And because he refused to help investigators. His silence about that night has remained one of the most suspicious parts of the entire case. But Wagner wasn't the only one on that yacht. Someone else was there, and he eventually broke his silence, too. Captain Dennis Davern was there that night, on board the Splendor when Natalie Wood vanished, and he never believed it was just a terrible accident. At first, Davern backed up Wagner's story. He told the police that Natalie probably slipped while trying to tie up the dinghy. That's what everyone believed, until years later when Davern changed everything. In the early 2000s, Davern began speaking out. He said he was pressured to stay quiet. And worse, he said Wagner might have had a direct hand in what happened to Natalie. In interviews and his book, Goodbye Natalie, Goodbye Splendor, Davern described a wild fight between Wagner and what had happened right before she disappeared. He claimed Wagner became furious over Natalie's close relationship with her co-star, Christopher Walken, who was also on the boat that night. Davern said he heard loud crashing sounds, like furniture being thrown, followed by total silence. Then Wagner came to him and said, "Natalie's missing," but told him not to turn on the lights or call anyone. In 2011, during a major interview with the Today Show, Davern went further. He said he believed Wagner was responsible for what happened to Natalie, and that back in 1981, he had lied to the police because Wagner told him exactly what to say. That same year, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Office reopened the case, and suddenly, Davern's story became the centerpiece. Investigators said his updated version was now credible and couldn't be ignored. His new statements flipped the case on its head and turned a cold file into one of Hollywood's most talked about investigations all over again. Captain Dennis Davern didn't just witness the events that night. He lived with the guilt for decades. He insists that if emergency services had been called in time, Natalie Wood could have been saved. But they weren't. And Wagner, Natalie's husband, still refuses to speak publicly about what really happened. Davern, however, never gave up. In interviews and sworn statements, he's expressed deep regret for staying quiet for so long. His transformation from silent bystander to key whistleblower is one of the most shocking twists in this chilling case. It shows just how complex and haunting the truth aboard the Splendor really was. But the most terrifying part of this mystery, it might not be the delay. It might be what two total strangers heard that night, sounds that still send chills decades later. Marilyn Wayne and John Payne were nearby on their boat that night, anchored off Catalina Island. Just after midnight, Marilyn said she woke up to the horrifying sound of a woman screaming, "Help me! Someone please help me, I'm drowning." That voice, frantic, terrified, cried out again and again for 15 minutes. Marilyn wasn't the only one who heard it. John Payne backed up her story. Even worse, they both claimed they also heard a man's voice replying in a calm, almost cold tone. "Okay, honey." That phrase? It's haunted investigators for decades. Who said it? Why didn't they do anything? Was someone on the Splendor awake, listening while Natalie begged for her life? Marilyn said the voice was not someone slipping silently into the sea. It was loud, clear, and desperate. She believed, without question, that it was Natalie. She even sent letters to the police trying to report it. But shockingly, she claimed she got anonymous threats warning her to stay quiet. And during the original investigation, authorities reportedly ignored her. Not until the case was reopened decades later did her words finally get attention. The Wayne Payne testimony flipped everything. Suddenly, this wasn't just a tragedy. It was a missed opportunity. A woman cried for help. Someone heard her, and no one did anything. Even worse, Natalie was famously terrified of water. She would never have gone out near the edge of the yacht alone, especially not at night, in rough weather, while drunk and medicated. Natalie's fear of water was no secret. Natalie's phobia wasn't mild. It was something she carried with her since childhood. A fortune teller once told her mother, "Your daughter will die in dark water." And Natalie believed it. She avoided open water, refused to swim at night, and didn't even like being near the edge of a boat. Her sister, Lana Wood, later said Natalie would never, ever have left that cabin on her own. That night was cold and stormy. Waves crashed against the boat. Natalie had been drinking, possibly taking medication, and was wearing a flannel nightgown, down coat, and socks when her body was found. That's not clothing someone wears to go outside, not even to check on a dinghy. And about that dinghy, no one nearby heard it being used. Wagner claimed Natalie left the boat to secure it, but that doesn't make sense. Not for someone who was terrified of water, and definitely not for someone dressed for bed. Nothing about this was normal. Friends and crew members confirmed it over the years. Natalie never walked around the yacht alone, not even during the day. She stayed in the cabin. She avoided the deck. She avoided danger. So, how did she end up in the water? Why was she crying for help for 15 minutes? And why did someone respond but never acted? It doesn't add up. None of it ever did. And the more you look, the clearer it becomes. Natalie Wood didn't just disappear. Something happened that night. Something no one was supposed to know. The shocking toxicology report that changed everything. When the coroner's report on Natalie Wood's death was released, it didn't just raise eyebrows. It blew the case wide open. Her blood alcohol level was 0.14%, more than enough to cause serious intoxication. But that wasn't all. She also had Dramamine for motion sickness and a painkiller in her system. Alone, each of these could cause drowsiness. Together, they're a dangerous mix. But it wasn't the substances that caused the most concern. It was what they found on her body. Natalie had bruises on her arms, legs, face, even a scratch on her neck. The original coroner tried to say those could have happened when she hit the water. But when the case was reopened years later, forensic experts weren't convinced. Some bruises were in places that don't match what you'd expect from a simple fall. Some looked fresh, like they came from a struggle. Suddenly, this didn't look like an accident. It looked like something much darker. Captain Dennis Davern had already told investigators there was a loud argument on the boat before Natalie vanished. He heard yelling. He heard things breaking. And then silence. Robert Wagner later admitted there was a fight that night, but not with Natalie. He claimed it was with actor Christopher Walken over Natalie's career. Wagner even confessed he smashed a wine bottle in anger, something he never mentioned at first. That single act of violence confirmed part of Davern's version of events. So if Wagner lied about that, what else might he be hiding? Natalie's body told a different story. Those bruises weren't just bumps. They were in suspicious places. On her arms, on her face, on her neck. Some experts said they looked like signs of physical force, not something caused by floating in the ocean. In 2012, officials finally took notice. The coroner changed the cause of death on Natalie's certificate. It no longer said accidental drowning. Instead, it now read, drowning and other undetermined factors. That change wasn't just paperwork. It was a public admission that the original story didn't make sense. Wagner's version? It doesn't add up. At first, Wagner told investigators Natalie probably went to secure a noisy dinghy. He said the night was calm. No drama. No violence. But once new witnesses came forward, his story started shifting. He then admitted to the argument with Walken, to the broken wine bottle, to the rising tension. But by then, it was too late. His story had changed too many times. And when police reopened the case, they named Wagner a person of interest. Lieutenant John Corina didn't hold back. He told the media Wagner's account just doesn't add up. Even worse, Wagner refused to talk to investigators when they reopened the case. That silence only made things look more suspicious. From accident to mystery, the reclassification that sparked new questions. For over 30 years, Natalie's death was called a tragic accident. But everything changed in 2012 when the death certificate was quietly updated to reflect a new truth: drowning and other undetermined factors. Why the change? Because Davern's updated testimony and new witness reports forced officials to take a second look, and what they found was chilling. The bruises on Natalie's body weren't all consistent with drowning. Some, especially those on her face and arms, suggested she was injured before she ever hit the water. That revelation blew apart the idea that she slipped and fell. It added a terrifying new possibility, that something happened before she went overboard, something that's still being covered up to this day. The death certificate that shook Hollywood. For decades, people were told Natalie Wood's death was just a tragic accident, a slip, a fall, and a drowning. But in 2012, everything changed. The coroner didn't just update a report. He challenged the entire story. The new cause of death? Drowning and other undetermined factors. That simple phrase sent shockwaves to the media and reopened old wounds. Why? Because it suggested what many had long suspected. Natalie didn't just fall. The updated report noted that some injuries may have happened before she entered the water. Bruises in strange places. Marks that didn't line up with the fell while tying the dinghy story. This wasn't a slip. This was a mystery. Maybe even a cover-up. Robert Wagner wasn't named, but he wasn't cleared either. The new death certificate didn't point fingers, but it left the door wide open. And suddenly, Robert Wagner's name was back in headlines. The coroner's office admitted there were undetermined factors. The case was still open. If new witnesses came forward, the investigation could move again. And that's exactly what Natalie's sister had been demanding for years. Lana Wood won't let her sister be forgotten. Lana Wood has never stayed quiet. Since the beginning, she said something wasn't right about Natalie's death. And she's made it clear she believes Robert Wagner was involved. In interview after interview, Lana repeats the same haunting truth. Natalie was terrified of dark water. She would never go to the side of the boat alone, in her nightgown and socks. But now the veil is lifting. The world is finally starting to see through the lies. With new forensic tools, fresh investigations, and survivors speaking out, the truth is getting harder to bury. Natalie Wood's case isn't just a cold case. It's a symbol of silence, of cover-ups, and of a system that valued fame over justice. And even if Robert Wagner never speaks, the evidence speaks for itself. Because Natalie didn't just vanish. She was lost in a storm of power, silence, and unanswered questions. Thanks for watching. If this story shocked you or left you with questions, drop them in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more real Hollywood mysteries. And if you think this was dark, click the next video. The secrets only get deeper from here.